Building it brick by brick.
The Democrats turn their backs on progressive groups and interests: labor, minorities, the disabled, women, all of the working class and the poor. So, as we said, the neoliberal playbook includes implementing massive deregulation policies, the privatization of public services, and reducing funding to the public and social services that remain. Because it wasn't Ronald Reagan that heralded the onset of neoliberal policies in American government. No, it was President Jimmy Carter. Pat Caddell says, "This crisis is not your fault as president. It is the natural result of historical forces and events that have been in motion for 20 years. This crisis threatens the political and social fabric of our nation. Yet, listen to this. This is very, very interesting. Yet, this crisis also represents the greatest opportunity for you as president to become a great president on the order of Lincoln, Wilson, and Franklin Roosevelt." Where else have we heard a politician saying that we should look at a disaster as an opportunity? She wasn't the first person to say it. It's an idea that is as old as neoliberal policies are. So, what is it that Jimmy Carter did that earns him the brand of neoliberal, or the first Democratic president to usher in neoliberal policies? Well, he pushed a lot of deregulation. He devoted substantial effort to transportation deregulation and worked with congressional and civil society leaders to pass the Airline Deregulation Act of 1978, the Staggers Rail Act of 1980, and the Motor Carrier Act of 1980. All had a tremendous impact on the industrialized backbone of the United States. The industry concluded that from 85,000 to 107,000 of its members were laid off as of April 1982. And the trucking industry has never recovered. And I know it's shocking, but you shouldn't be shocked by Carter's policies and how they negatively affected American workers. Not if you know that Alfred Kahn was a key advisor to Carter. And Kahn was the architect of Carter's airline deregulation policy, which led to the deregulation of trucking, telecoms, power industries, and heralded the Thatcherite and Reaganite revolutions. Thomas Frank, who I'm going to talk about a little bit later, actually notes in his book, Listen Liberal, one of the most shocking quotes in the book is from Alfred Kahn, an advisor to Jimmy Carter, who said, quote, "I'd love the Teamsters to be worse off. I'd love the automobile workers to be worse off." He raised the prime interest rate as high as 22%, constricting productive activity. The Federal Reserve's attempts to fight stagflation only ended up making it worse. But as far as neoliberalism is concerned, the beginning of the rightward turn of the Democratic Party toward neoliberalism, history proves that it was Carter who got the ball rolling. History also proves that the Democratic Party never returned to its post-Jim Crow roots as a populist, advocates for the working class, poor, and marginalized party. The Democratic Leadership Council was established in the wake of President Ronald Reagan's 1984 landslide victory, in which he won 49 states over Democrat Walter Mondale. According to Fromm, the new leadership should aim to create distance from the new bosses, which were organized labor, feminists, other progressive constituency groups. He believed that these constituency groups were keeping the party from modernizing. Fromm's memo sparked the formation of the Democratic Leadership Council in 1985. DLC, Democrats supported aid to the Contras, for example, which is part of the reason so few Democrats really spoke out against the Iran-Contra CIA drug connection scandal. They applauded Ronald Reagan's evil empire rhetoric, and they offered their support to those militarists calling for missile defense and rejected arms control negotiations. These were all Democrats. Chuck Robb said, quote, "While racial discrimination has by no means vanished from our society, it's time to shift the primary focus from racism, the traditional enemy without, to self-defeating patterns of behavior, the enemy within." This is from a Democratic governor. Within the DLC, populism was not only out of favor, it was militantly opposed. The organization had virtually no grassroots supporters. This is extremely important. It was funded almost entirely by corporate donors. She learned it from somewhere. The DLC is where. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Koch Industries at one time contributed money to the Democratic leadership. We most easily associated with the DLC are these two guys, Al Gore and Joe Lieberman. In the UK, again, third way policies found a home on Downing Street in England. And each Democratic president we've had since Carter has been an inheritor and an ambassador of the DLC's model and legacy of the dismissal of critical racial, social justice, and labor issues that are important to enormous swaths of the American populace. It really is what they're willing to give up, what they're willing to ignore in order to win. And please understand, they don't ever intend to address those issues when they win, as we have so well seen. But don't believe me. Believe Thomas Frank. He talks about the history in much more detail than what I just talked to you about of when the Democratic Party made this shift. And we were assured that Democratic presidents were the most, this one particular Democratic president, President Obama, was the most liberal or radical president we would ever see. That's what we were told. But inequality's gotten worse. And the gains since the financial crisis, since the recovery began, went to who? Not you and me. It went to the top 10%. Actually, the percentage is now smaller than that. So this isn't just because of the evil Republicans. It's not just because of the obstruction that Obama received. Because really, let's be honest, because we're all about being honest here on Brick by Brick, Obama played it the way he wanted to, just like a DLC Democrat would, just like a third way Democrat would, just like a neoliberal Democrat would. He had a majority in both houses of Congress for 2 years, and he could have done anything he wanted. But he consistently made policies that favored the top, less than 10%, over everybody else. That's the story of money. And it wasn't obvious in the 70s under Carter. It wasn't obvious when they made that choice, but over the years we have the benefit of hindsight now to look back on that history and say, wait, we're giving Reagan too much credit. He wasn't that smart.
Building it brick by